There comes a point in every empath's life when the weight becomes too heavy. At first, they see the pain of others and want to heal it. They open themselves up, absorb emotions like a sponge, and believe that their compassion can fix the brokenness around them. But over time, this gift starts to feel more like a curse. The empath becomes drained, manipulated, and often trapped in relationships with people who feed off their kindness, people who take without giving back. If you've ever been an empath caught in the orbit of a narcissist, you know the cycle, the charm, the manipulation, the constant invalidation, and the endless giving that never seems to be enough. The narcissist thrives on this exchange because it allows them to project their insecurities outward, while the empath silently absorbs them. But here's the twist: when an empath finally gets fed up, when they wake up and realize they've been carrying pain that isn't theirs, the dynamic shifts completely. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who pioneered depth psychology, believed that our greatest strength comes from integrating our shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. For the empath, this awakening is like striking gold. Once they stop absorbing and start confronting, they become more powerful than the narcissist ever imagined. In this video, we'll break down why the fed-up empath is not just free from manipulation, but actually more dangerous to the narcissist than the narcissist is to them. Narcissist versus empath, a Jungian framework. From a Jungian perspective, the narcissist and the empath are polar opposites in how they deal with the shadow. The narcissist denies it completely. They build an inflated persona, a mask of superiority, perfection, and control to cover up an inner void filled with shame and insecurity. To maintain this mask, they need others to reflect back the illusion. This is why narcissists seek supply, attention, validation, and emotional reactions that prop up their false self. The empath, on the other hand, does the opposite. Instead of denying the shadow, they often absorb it, but not their own. They carry the shadows of others. If someone is angry, the empath feels it. If someone is ashamed, the empath internalizes it. They confuse empathy with responsibility, which leaves them vulnerable to narcissists who are more than willing to offload their emotional baggage. In Jungian language, the empath unconsciously becomes the shadow container for the narcissist. This creates a dangerous imbalance. The narcissist offloads, the empath takes on. The narcissist denies, the empath absorbs. The narcissist feeds, the empath drains. But while the narcissist believes they are in control, this imbalance has a breaking point. Unlike the narcissist, who remains stuck in denial, the empath has the potential to awaken, and when they do, the power dynamic reverses. Why the empath snaps? No empath stays unconscious forever. At some point, the cracks begin to show. They feel the exhaustion in their body, the emptiness in their spirit, and the resentment in their heart. They start to see a pattern. They are always giving, always bending, always sacrificing, yet the narcissist is never satisfied. This realization is the beginning of what Jung would call individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating what was once unconscious. The snapping point often comes when the empath realizes that their compassion has been weaponized against them. What they saw as kindness, the narcissist saw as weakness. What they thought was love, the narcissist treated as supply. This betrayal is deeply painful, but it also becomes the catalyst for change. The empath begins to see that their empathy is not infinite, and that constantly absorbing others' shadows is destroying them. The third layer of this awakening is self-betrayal. The empath recognizes that by constantly prioritizing others, they have abandoned themselves. Their own needs, desires, and boundaries have been buried under the weight of someone else's emotions. This is the moment of truth. Continue as the silent carrier of shadows, or reclaim their energy and face their own darkness. Most empaths, when they finally snap, choose the latter. And that's when the danger begins for the narcissist. The individuated empath. Individuation, according to Jung, is the process of integrating the conscious and unconscious self into wholeness. For the empath, this means no longer serving as a dumping ground for others' shadows. They begin to recognize manipulation when it happens. They set boundaries. They honor their own needs without guilt. This shift is not gradual, it is often dramatic. The empath who once absorbed without question suddenly becomes the empath who sees through everything. The individuated empath is powerful because they no longer fall for projection. When the narcissist tries to blame them, gaslight them, or provoke them, the empath doesn't absorb it. Instead, they reflect it back. They see the game for what it is, a defense mechanism built on fear and denial. This clarity makes them immune to the narcissist's tactics. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The empath, once awakened, refuses to be directed by anyone else's unconscious. What makes this transformation so threatening to the narcissist is that their power relies entirely on unconsciousness. The minute someone sees through them, their illusions collapse. The individuated empath doesn't just escape, they dismantle the entire dynamic. They no longer react, they no longer feed, and without their reactions, the narcissist loses their grip. Archetypal reversal, from caretaker to warrior. In Jungian terms, the empath often begins in the archetype of the caregiver, the healer, the nurturer, the one who sacrifices for others. This role feels natural, but it also leaves them open to exploitation. When the empath awakens, however, they undergo an archetypal shift. They transform from caregiver into something far more formidable. Some empaths become warriors. They defend their psyche with strong boundaries and refuse to tolerate manipulation. Others become magicians, able to see through illusions, deceptions, and false personas with clarity that unnerves the narcissist. Some even step into the role of the ruler, claiming sovereignty over their lives and no longer giving authority to anyone outside themselves. Each of these archetypal shifts represents a reclaiming of power that was previously externalized. The narcissist never expects this reversal. They assumed the empath would always be pliable, forgiving, and endlessly giving. Instead, they are confronted with someone who is self-aware, self-protective, and unwilling to play the old role. In Jungian terms, the empath has stopped living through archetypal inflation and started living from their self, the core of their authentic being. Why the narcissist never saw it coming? Narcissists are short-sighted. Because they avoid self-reflection, they cannot imagine others engaging in deep self-reflection. They live in a psychological loop where they expect others to endlessly provide supply. The idea that an empath could break free, integrate their shadow, and turn the tables never crosses their mind. This blindness is their downfall. When the empath withdraws, the narcissist experiences a collapse of their false self. The charm no longer works. The gaslighting falls flat. The guilt trips are ignored. Suddenly, the narcissist is forced to face the one thing they fear most, their own emptiness. In this sense, the empath's awakening doesn't just protect them, it directly threatens the narcissist's survival structure. This is why the fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist ever imagined. Their awakening is like pulling the plug from the narcissist's power source. The narcissist can no longer project outward, they are left alone with their shadow, something they have spent their entire lives avoiding. And there is nothing more destabilizing to a narcissist than being forced to see themselves clearly. The fed-up empath's power. Once awakened, the empath holds power in ways they never realized before. First, they gain clarity of perception. They can identify toxic patterns instantly, not just in narcissists but in workplaces, families, and social systems. Second, they master boundaries. The guilt that once plagued them for saying no disappears. They understand that boundaries are not cruelty, they are self-respect. Third, the empath integrates their own shadow. They no longer suppress their anger, grief, or fear. Instead, they harness these emotions as sources of strength. This integration is what Jung considered the ultimate path to wholeness. The empath becomes authentic, living from their core self rather than from roles imposed by others. Finally, they develop resilience. What once broke them now builds them. The narcissist who once drained their life force becomes a teacher in disguise, a catalyst for their awakening. By surviving the narcissist, the empath discovers their greatest strength. They cannot be controlled by unconscious forces anymore. Conclusion. Carl Jung believed that healing and power come not from escaping the darkness, but from integrating it. The narcissist refuses this task, clinging to a false mask while projecting their shadow onto others. The empath, however, has the courage to absorb and face the darkness, even if it nearly destroys them. But when the empath finally says enough, they reclaim their power in ways that the narcissist could never predict. The fed-up empath becomes dangerous not because they seek revenge, but because they become immune. They stop feeding the narcissist's illusions. They stop carrying shadows that are not theirs. They embody wholeness, authenticity, and self-sovereignty. For the narcissist, this is the ultimate nightmare, losing control of the one person they thought they could control forever. In the end, the empath's awakening is not just a personal victory. It is a ripple effect in the collective. Every empath who refuses to carry projections forces others to face their shadows. And in doing so, they embody Jung's most powerful insight: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.